Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of the Cradle News Roundup, your one stop shop for all news West Asia. My name is Esteban Carrillo. I'm the news editor for The Cradle, and as usual, I'm joined by my friends and colleagues, content creator and writer for The Cradle, Karim Shami, and columnist and editor for The Cradle, Sharmin Narwani. And also, as usual, before we start, just to remind you, hit that like button, subscribe to our channel if you haven't yet, check out our memberships. But above all, please check out our Patreon, where you can become a direct supporter of the cradle and the work that we do here. And well, as the title implies, we have just witnessed a few hours ago the latest example of the idea of imperial blowback or the imperial boomerang, right? That whatever empire does outside of their borders will eventually find their way back home. Last night, two National Guardsmen were shot at close range in the U.S. Capitol, allegedly by Rahmanullah Lakanwal. I do apologize for my pronunciation.
You do
Um,
need to.
an Afghan national who was caught and reportedly shot the two. And very interestingly, a CIA asset, a member of the CIA backed Kandahar Strike Force, which carried out night raids and assassinations alongside US Special Forces against the Taliban and Al Qaeda during the US occupation of Afghanistan, and who made his way to the US following the disastrous pullout of US troops in 2021 from Afghanistan. Many questions left to be answered, but we have already seen the response from or at the very least, the initial response from the US government, which includes a crackdown on immigration, on refugee claims, putting an end, or at least for now, on any immigration requests from Afghanistan, and of course, good old reliable fear mongering of Muslims, fear mongering of people from the region. You know, they are coming to get us. We need to fight them. So, yeah, what do you guys think about this? It really doesn't feel like, I mean, many things kind of point to this being, I don't want to call it a false flag, really, but also, you know,
Weird.
it comes to mind. The word comes to mind.
Chemo?
Yes, first him being an asset, I think because many of the Afghans that were taken by the United States and also by some Gulf countries such as UAE, they were already working with the U.S. Army and the CIA in Afghanistan. So I think that's why people are saying he's in the CIA. But currently, I think what happened is that this empowered Trump because I think there was zero chance of him hitting Trump or like injuring Trump. But what he did now is that he allowed Trump to spread more army personnel inside the
National Guard, National
yeah,
Guard
National
personnel.
Guard inside Washington, which every single uh, enemy,
Democrat?
Democrats,
Mhm.
don't want that. So that's my view on it. Yani we have to wait and see what the purpose of this. We don't know what this man,
Actually
why
wanted, yeah.
this man. Yeah, maybe it's like something different because we knew that Trump also was. They tried to shot him and nothing happened, and now nobody talks about it as if it didn't happen. So we will see.
Yeah, I think it is too early to um, offer up any opinions on this, but I mean, there are a few things that come to mind. One is how quickly he was identified as a CIA asset in Afghanistan, um,
By the
and
media.
the other thing is the fact that very mainstream media and media commentators made that connection and have gone, you know, have posted all over social media. We're even seeing some headlines. Usually we're the ones trying to show that X was a CIA asset or had links to the US government or had, links to major American personalities. And mainstream media is trying to bury it. Why are they highlighting this right away now? And it seems to me it's part of the fight between the Trump administration and his opponents on, Democrats, et cetera, on deploying the National Guard, not just in Washington, D.C., but in other cities across the US. And of course, in recent days, we've seen a confrontation between Trump and his supporters and US lawmakers. Uh,
Marjorie
eh,
Taylor Greene comes to mind.
well, yeah, that. I mean, not just MAGA, but in this
Mhm.
case, where several members um, of Congress have recently boldly come out and told US military soldiers that they have to follow the law before they follow orders. And that made Trump furious.
He flipped his lid.
He flipped his lid and wrote on Truth Social, and this is about is it Robert Mark Kelly, Senator Mark Kelly, whose wife Gabrielle Giffords was a congresswoman and was shot in the head, basically narrowly survived an assassination attempt in 2011. He's now a congressman. I think he became congressman in 2020, just as Joe Biden was coming in. And uh, tr- Trump basically went on social media and said that Kelly and the others who spoke out about this, the military should follow the law over orders. Uh, that they had engaged in quote unquote seditious behavior punishable by death. Okay, this is the guy whose ambassador to Tel Aviv, Huckabee, met up with, a very infamous US Jewish prisoner who'd been released for spying for the United States, Jonathan Pollard, right? This is Trump is calling Kelly, Kelly's behavior and speaking out, seditious behavior punishable by death. And then Trump went on to repost another Truth Social user who wrote in part, hang them. Okay. Now, Trump has had assassination attempts against him. You have actually a series of lawmakers who've had assassination attempts against them. You've had that CEO of the insurance company who was killed, right? Um, what is he encouraging? I mean, you had people
He wants civil war.
calling for the hanging of former Vice President Pence, right, who went against Trump at the 11th hour, right? So, what kind of discourse is this in so-called democratic state?
Here's
Um,
it,
and
it
yeah, I'm just saying there's a lot of confrontations boiling, but the fact that Western mainstreamers went online almost immediately, making this the shooter's connection to the CIA suggests that they think they're trying to lay down a narrative. These guys are all scene setters. Mainstream media and the
yeah.
big name journalists are all scene setters for political reason. Okay, when they're all saying something in lockstep, you know that there's a missive out there saying we need to cover the story with this angle. That's how it works in mainstream media. And they're all saying this was a CIA thing, trying to show perhaps that someone is trying to maybe show why the National Guard is needed on the street, or it could be the opposite camp, which is trying to make the case that the National Guard shouldn't be on the street. But this is deep state politics
I
at
think
its
it's a
worst.
yeah. Like the shooting itself, I feel like it's a pretty malleable situation. It kind of is like a fit all purposes, and you're kind of seeing it displayed from the one camp and the other. They're just blaming each other. I want to go briefly back to your point about the Mark Kelly video, the astronaut as well, right? It's pretty funny. Donald Trump, the draft dodger, is the one that is like trying to give lessons about what the army should and should not be doing. In one of his many posts in regard to this, he posted the actual oath that U.S. service members have to make when they join the army. And it actually says, it actually proves Mark Kelly's points because the oath says, should orders and the law ever conflict, our officers must obey the law. And now, just to highlight what Mark Kelly was talking about in particular, is the extrajudicial killings of fishermen in the Caribbean Sea and the attempts to launch a regime coup, a regime change war in Venezuela, which, even today, the New York Times, and this actually shocked me, they published this story saying, oh, by the way, the Nobel Peace Prize winner who's claiming that the Venezuelan government is a drug cartel, she's lying. It's not true. So there is these, conflicting narratives at this point, and I feel like at this whole shooting in DC, just adding fuel to the fire and just obscuring more exactly, how they're going back at it. They're going back and forth.
Yeah. I mean, uh, here's the thing though. Ultimately, how many Americans care about the application of the law in regards to Venezuelan fishermen
Very true.
versus if an Afghan, a Muslim, killed two of their National Guardsmen in Washington, very close to the White House. So to me, this suggests a fight. I mean, I think Mark Kelly just came in at the wrong time. Like this potentially would have happened regardless of that. But altogether, it makes for a bigger firestorm, I think. I mean, I think whoever intended to have these guardsmen killed to set an example to make a political argument either for against using the National Guard in the United States or for using them, right? That would have happened regardless. I was watching an interview by I think it was Afshin Ratansi, who has a show on RT today, and he was interviewing the former CIA bureau chief in Tel Aviv, and he was asking about this. He was asking about like why exactly are we talking about hitting Venezuela? Like why exactly nobody ever heard of this drug cartel, the name that y'all are just throwing out everywhere. Nobody's ever heard of them. She's like, well, she hadn't heard of them, but she's sure they're doing the right thing. And then he points out, he's like, the CIA has been drug running um, forever. And she's like, no, 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 we don't. He's like, no, it's on the congressional record or in the congressional record that the CIA
It's a known
was
fact.
involved in drug trafficking activities. But of course, we know this from, I mean, just here at the Cradle when we started, one of the first stories, 2021, the US exit from Afghanistan, one of the first stories we did that went viral globally was showing how quickly the Taliban, when they, took power again, shut down the poppy fields and then noted that that had happened before in 2001 when they'd first taken power. They shut down the poppy fields. And it is the Americans coming in that restarted that business in a massive way. Yet the American narrative has always been like, oh yeah, laundering money. It's the Taliban, the evil Muslim terrorists.
Let
They're
me
the ones, trying to sell drugs. But we found out that in fact this was an American and allied operation, and it was a way for them to launder money. By the way, legitimately and legally through because they were the ones doing it through the global financial system, which is run by the West.
What a shock! Let me read you one quick, just sorry, Karim, a line from this New York Times report that I was talking about today. They in particular mentioned that the Cartel de los Soles, this name that
Mm.
Nicolas Maduro supposedly runs, the activities first of all stretch back to an era well before him, and then say that the term gained traction after a 1993 scandal when the CIA worked with the Venezuelan military to send a ton of cocaine to the United States in a bid to infiltrate Colombian cartels. It's just out there. It's all out there, like the falsehoods. Yesterday, I was seeing someone like who was it? A Florida representative. She was on Fox News saying that Venezuela, besides sending all of this alleged cocaine, they're also giving uranium to Hamas. Apparently, Venezuela is giving uranium to Hamas.
Isn't that like yellow cake uranium to Niger? Isn't that what um, precipitated? Was it the attack on Iraq? Yeah, the
What?
attack on Iraq. They were talking about how the Iraqis were providing yellow cake uranium to Niger.
Mm.
Yeah, they're
Isn't that
saying
correct?
Venezuela
And
is
then,
infiltrating, is stealing the elections too. That they are the ones meddling in elections. I mean, there's nothing that the Venezuelan government is incapable of doing. They truly are omnipotent.
but it's so reminiscent of how they made the case for a buildup of war
Mm.
against Iraq because there
Yes.
was that bizarre uranium connection, right? And I actually knew Joe Wilson, who was a neighbor, Ambassador Joe Wilson, the guy who temporarily occupied the ambassadorial role in Iraq and tried to get out like the U.S. hostages that Saddam Hussein had held at the time. Um, he actually, his career plummeted when he wrote an editorial. He went to Niger. Okay. He went to Niger. US taxpayer dollars funded this. I think he did it as a gig for a US, um, I don't know if it was US intelligence or some US department, maybe State Department. And he wrote an editorial saying this was absolutely bogus. And that's when they basically pulled the veil off his wife, Valerie Plame. Remember her? Valerie Plame was a CIA agent, and they went after her. God, all these names I've heard. This is during George W. Bush's administration. Scooter Libby, those people, they basically uncovered one of their own CIA agents in order to punish Joe Wilson for daring to absolutely obliterate their lie that Iraqis were selling uranium to Niger. It's ugly. I mean, right now it's like every day, right? It's the establishment against the establishment.
They're tearing each other
Yeah,
apart, honestly. Go ahead, Karim.
yeah. I think yani, we are talking about this situation, what happened in the United States yesterday, but also because the false flags that the United States and Israel did in many countries and even inside their borders and the propaganda they did do. Whatever happens in the United States, you may never ever know what happened, and everybody will say some conspiracy theories because that's how the United States is.
But now
And
people are uncovering them. That's the thing. They're like themselves, they're calling things out. People who have weight,
yeah,
they're calling
but
these things out
eventually,
immediately. And it used to be us, right? Independent media who had to dig
mm,
up these connections and wait for actual evidence. Sometimes it took decades, right, to show that in fact it was a conspiracy that,
Like Syria.
yeah, like Syria. Now
like
everybody
Syria,
understands that.
Libya,
Iraq, they now understand that. Speaking of Libya, um, Karim, I tweeted him something, and then we discovered it was because I only saw it today, but we discovered it was like an interview in April this year with a former U.S. congressman who'd made several trips to Libya, and he basically said, "Karim, do you have that clip? Did I
yeah, you
send
want
it
me
to
to?
you?"
Yeah, I can play it now.
We can just, because it's so interesting. He said Gaddafi, uh, you know, Libya's head of state, Muammar Gaddafi, had actually shown him his resignation, but the Americans didn't want that. They wanted to kill Gaddafi. That was a goal because only then could they take Libya's oil and resources. And now the US has access to that. Of course, Gaddafi was also the one. I mean, he was, he Libya was the strongest economy in terms of surplus
In
in
Africa, yeah,
Africa,
for many
and
years.
he had been pushing for
Karim, I don't know what
African.
you shared, but I'm guessing it's not what you wanted to share.
It's yeah, African. He'd been pushing African unity. He'd been pushing the idea of
Of
unifying or
African
creating a
currency.
unified African currency
Mhm.
based on gold, right? And so even though Gaddafi was happy to resign, they wanted to kill him. And this is what they've done to Libya. So every single thing that we've always called out in this region, because we know what's happening in this region, that was called a conspiracy, has actually proven to be correct. But now you have Americans doing it. Americans like Tucker Carlson, Americans like Candace Owens. Now you have today Lara Logan, for goodness sakes, tweeting out that this, he was a CIA asset. It could have been used, the CIA could have run this operation to hit the National Guard. I'm amazed. We should just shut up, the
Let them
cradle and just
talk.
let
Yeah.
them, yeah, let them do it.
You
Do
want
you
to
want
play
me to
this?
play it?
Sure, sure. Why not? Let's just,
Staffer and a Bush staffer and a film crew leader from ABC One in New York, Larry Menti, with me, and a cameraman because I didn't want the CIA to set me up. I hand carried the letter back from Gaddafi offering to resign. The U.S. didn't want him to resign. They wanted to kill him.
Why?
Because Gaddafi, and I met him 3 times. I took Biden on my second trip to Libya, by the way. He went with me when I spoke to the whole country. And every meeting I had with Gaddafi, he wanted 2 things. He wanted to unite the African continent into a group of nations economically, like European standard gold, like the European economy. He wanted to base it on the gold standard. And the U.S. and Europe didn't want that. And the other thing is they wanted control of his oil and they wanted control of his sovereign wealth. So Gaddafi had to go. That's outrageous and it's wrong.
Yeah, but that I think sounds right to me.
I mean, but we've allowed so many of our kids
We can
to be
stop it
drawn.
there.
It's what Chavez wanted
I
in
mean,
South America as well.
they're all outing themselves now. I think everyone, even some mainstream types, are so um, upset by how America's unraveling in so many ways that you have people, speaking out. People who are in power at at the moment, which is, they usually wait until they're out of power to offer up the nuggets of, of truth and
But
information. But what?
يعني, do you think, for instance, if everything was uncovered and every single American knew that his government lied and they waged all this wars and killed millions of Arabs for their oil or for Israel, do you think anything will change in the foreign policy of the United States, even if the whole Americans knew about
Yeah,
it?
because here's how you could take it to the bank. And I think there is some organization, definitely not enough yet, but the community organizers, if you want, who helped organize Rashida Tlaib and AOC and Mamdan Zahrani and others have actually succeeded in putting in different voices into Congress. And they're such small voices um, that they're going to get crushed. So they play with the mainstream of Congress on major games and then maybe get like little nuggets for their constituents. But I think if you had, for instance, a leak of everything, right? People would discover, the shenanigans of their member of Congress. And that would be a local story. I mean, there would be national stories, obviously, about corruption, et cetera, revelations, leaks, but these would be local stories in every local publication that don't have the same kind of controls as mainstream media. And these members of Congress would be flushed out. Okay. These officials from these states who had committed major wrongdoings, gone against the Constitution, gone against the law, et cetera, would be flushed out. And I think you could have an entirely new, like a political rehaul. And one of those things, because this has been, discussed in the United States at various levels for decades now, is the removal of funding for political elections. Right? If you take that out of the equation entirely, no more PACs, no more lobby money, all right? Then all citizens become equal. And
And there is hope.
Eh, I,
who
there's not.
knows? I mean, because maybe the sitting president will set out the National Guard and ICE to just eliminate all dissent. We don't know. I mean,
He's
the
already
thing
doing that
is,
one.
those in power always try to hang on to it and claw onto it. We don't know, but this goes back to what we've been saying for a while. There is a confrontation brewing in the United States. And by the way, a few years ago, there was a woman from the University or something in California, and they were contracted regularly by U.S. intelligence agencies, not like a secret thing, an open thing, to research areas in the world that had the components of civil strife, like a civil war could be brewing. And in years of doing this, she explained on the CNN interview that they discovered that there were certain elements, okay, that maybe what weren't overtly linked to social strife, but maybe economic, maybe societal, etc. There were certain components that collectively almost 100% predicted social strife would occur in a country. And then she says on CNN, for the first time in our years of research and investigation and producing these reports, the United States has all those criteria.
Yes.
So
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, well, yeah,
scientifically, even
100%.
the U.S.
Yes.
is plumped for
Yes.
civil war.
This is,
Yeah,
I
and
want to just,
before, yes,
I want to read a comment. I just completely, I think is the best comment today. He says, Gaddafi didn't know what a terrorist was until Tony Blair walked into his tent by Del
yeah,
Sendero.
100%.
Very well put, yes. Sorry, Karim, I just want to mention something before you go on. I completely agree actually with what Sharmin just said, that I think the studies, yeah, they have shown, the United States is a heavily fractured society, possibly, in the world, the most fractured society. This is a country in which there is no healing, there is no more minimal agreements, it's just more polarization, it's just more division. Donald Trump is feeding off of this. And I feel like, if we're talking about revolution, I guess, or an uprising, the main ingredient for a revolution is an empty stomach. And just look at the US economy.
Mm.
Look at how the regular US citizen is currently struggling to make ends meet or just to buy Thanksgiving dinner tonight. By the way, anyone in the US, actually, never mind. I will not.
Yeah, we don't want
I
to
will
say
not
happy
consider that
Thanksgiving.
holiday. No,
Yeah,
that's a horrible
to
thing.
give thanks to the mass slaughter
Yes,
of Native
exactly. Thanks for
Americans.
genocide.
Yeah.
Never mind. In any case, enjoy the time off and be with your families. I just wanted to add that very quickly. What were you going to say, Karim?
No, I just wanted to say that before we started, you pointed out something, which is this tweet from Donald Trump. It will appear now on the screen, where he said that if Afghanistan doesn't give Bagram Air Base back to those that built it, the United States of America, bad things are going to happen. So maybe also, yeah, there's many choices for them to act. For what happened yesterday, maybe they did it. Maybe the CIA just to give an excuse to the United States to bomb Afghanistan again.
Exactly, exactly. It's a very
No, but
premonitious little
he,
tweet that he sent.
he's, I mean, today I'm reading that Trump is threatening Honduras. It's
Yes.
every day. And honestly, I agree with many commentators who say that Trump doesn't think through these policies. He says what's in his head at the moment, who's been in his ear last. And but he's ultimately a businessman and negotiator, and he has learned, I'm sure, through high stakes negotiations over billions of dollars in the decades he's been doing his real estate business, that I guess what's worked for him in New York City has been coming in really belligerent, right? Scaring the pants off his opponent, okay? Or coming in with super high numbers on something, knowing full well they'll accept actually the number he wants. So that's his style. And he doesn't have to have much substance. This is kind of like the world of thuggery. Business is a very thuggish world. They
It
like to
is.
put on the suit and ties and groom their hair, but they're pretty much, the animals in the jungle, the worst of them. So, you know, Trump doing this everywhere around the world is just isolating the United States more and making people and entire states trying to minimize their exposure to the US economy, to US banks, to the US dollar. That
To the
is
thuggishness.
systematically happening. So it's not just the holding of, whatever, hundreds of billions of dollars of in Russian funds outside in Western countries. But what was I reading today? There's another country that they want to. Uh,
While you think of that, I want to point out something about Honduras since you brought it up, because he sent out a tweet saying, like the right wing candidate needs to win. In particular, he says the candidate from the Partido Nacional Party. The last time a member of the Partido Nacional Party was president in Honduras, it was with Juan Orlando Hernandez, who is currently serving time in a U.S. prison for drug trafficking. So, a candidate of the empire, indeed.
Yeah, and also I think I forgot which president he said that now he's allowing the United States to use their bases in South America.
Anywhere you pick, you pick a country. There's only a few that don't. Yeah, I'm
Insane,
not sure. I
insane.
mean, I know that, like for example, Puerto Rico at this point has become just essentially a U.S. base. Argentina, like Argentina is
Yeah,
whatever you ask of master, we will do. Same for Panama. Same for Peru. Same for Ecuador. Same for like too many countries, honestly, too many countries in Latin America. But actually, did you know? And while Charmin looks at the information that she's trying to find, that thanks to the governments of Mexico and Brazil in particular, which are leftist governments, Latin America has recorded its lowest poverty rate in decades. this year,
Mm.
despite everything else. So this is also one of the reasons why you're seeing this onslaught in that region in the world. In particular, is just slicing up the cake. This is our side, this is our territory, and we will do with it whatever we want.
For them, everything is their side. Unfortunately, to be
Yeah, well, I
honest,
mean,
yeah.
again, look at the economy.
If
Look at the economy. Everything
yeah,
really is just a question of how what do you call it? Artificial. How artificial the U.S. economy has become, and that's not just because of AI,
not only
or
the
mainly.
economy, even people. I don't feel that America is now knows they know how to express their feelings, and whenever you watch something that bad happened, you feel that the person who's talking, he's like as if he's acting his emotions. You know what I mean?
As if he's
As if
following a
everything
script.
is fake.
As if
Yeah,
he's
one
following, yeah.
percent.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
as
it's part of the polarization, of like that's what identity politics create. They create just like drones who speak in predetermined phrases. They don't actually talk to you, as a person. And very quickly, let me thank Jolly Lollipop one for their super chat. They say greetings to Karim, Esteban, and Charmin from the land of the free and the home of the brave. There's
thank you,
at least
Jolly.
three lies in that statement. No, two lies. Charmin, did you find what you were looking for?
No, it's so sorry. Chat a little bit more. I
We
I
shall,
really
we
want to
shall.
find this.
Well, actually, let's discuss something else for now, Karim. Last night,
Yes.
a very interesting development in the Iraqi Kurdistan region, in which a drone attack hit the Kormor gas field in. Hold on, let me find this correctly. Causing widespread outages in Nineveh, Al Sulaymaniyah, Erbil, and Duhok after the Cormor gas field was hit, and gas field currently being run by Dana
Yeah,
Gas and
operated.
Crescent
Yes.
Petroleum UAE companies. And I mean, who does this benefit? Who does this benefit? Who is being blamed too? Because we don't actually know who launched this airstrike. It's not the first time that Cormor gets hit. It's
Yeah.
been hit a few times, but interesting comments coming right after the attack, weren't there?
Yeah, 1%. This is the third time they were trying to hit this gas field in the past month. This is the first time they succeed this month. And previously, in 2024 and 2022, this gas field was hit, but we didn't see such photos and videos. Currently, I am searching for the video. I will share it with our viewers. The
It's a
fires were
huge. It was a
huge. The
huge
damage,
fire.
yeah, it's very huge. And usually. Uh, After these attacks, usually they accuse Iranian-backed militias
Shock.
because, yeah, because as you said that it's operated by the UAE, but also we should not forget that the Kurds inside Kurdistan, Iraq, which is an
Semi-autonomous region.
semi yes region in of Iraq, they also have problems between each other. Yani. I don't rule out that another Kurdish party might do this.
But
Of
something
course, I
interesting too.
yes,
Sorry to cut you off. Just to add very quickly, is that besides like implying that it was the Hashed al-Shabi, or just some Iranian-linked
yeah.
militias, it was also a call for the U.S. to finally give Kurdistan air defenses. Do you guys see why we need air defenses in Kurdistan? What a surprise, right? What would
And
air
this
defenses in
also
Kurdistan be used to? Well, maybe to protect Israel, wouldn't they?
and this also comes one day after many people in Iraq and the Iranian on the Iranian Iraqi border, they reported that they heard many airplanes in the sky. And also this week, many Hebrew news outlets said that the Israelis conducted like a drill above Iraq, and they like simulated an attack on Iran. And also there were many drones flying over the border there. So of course there's something is happening, and when this stuff happens, we can't rule out also Israel, the United States, which controls the
The airspace.
airspace of Iraq, and
The
of
first
course
reports I
Turkey.
saw, they were saying it was a Turkish drone. I mean, it was
Yeah,
really all
maybe.
over the place.
Yeah, I just said it. I don't rule out Turkey because Turkey,
Mhm.
they don't want the Kurdish. At least that's what they say in the media, and that's what Erdogan say. They
And they
don't.
have actual military bases illegal
Yeah,
inside
100%.
northern Iraq.
Yeah, and we don't have many information. And we wrote about this, I think, 2 years ago, Sharmin, and till now nobody exactly knows how many bases or how much the Iraqi army is inside northern Iraq, and the Iraqi governments they say nothing. Yeah.
I mean, let's be honest, a lot of Iraqis have an interest in, not allowing Kurdistan, which is the Kurdistan regional government is a very corrupt one, and they're constantly infighting. And they have now years, right, under their belt of having exploited Iraq's oil resources and sold it for their gain, and yet demanding payments for salaries from Baghdad, right? So, the other thing worth noting about the Kurdistan region, since this explosion took place there, is that the US has now, and the Cradle covered this, has announced its biggest consulate in the world in Erbil in Iraqi Kurdistan.
Bigger than the
Okay.
Beirut's.
Its biggest consulate in the world. The
Ah, the
biggest
consulate.
embassy in
Consulate.
the world, the US embassy in the world, is in Baghdad. And the second biggest US embassy in the world is in tiny Beirut, tiny Lebanon. But this would be the biggest US consulate in the world, which means it'll basically run like an embassy. It will have commercial attaches, it'll have its spy agencies, it'll have everything there. The Iraqi Kurdistan is part of the US project to divide up Syria, use the Kurds and Kurdish secessionist dreams. There's never been a Kurdish state in history, by the way, but Kurdish secessionist dreams that are heavily supported by Israel. So it's a U.S. Israeli project to, to diminish countries that are maybe rising, yeah, or have a rising profile economically, politically, otherwise, in West Asia. Um, in order to weaken them, right? That is the biggest Israeli project of all, but the Americans have carried out Israeli projects regularly in this region, breaking Iraq into essentially Sunni, Shia, and Kurdish regions is an American accomplishment. Okay, and so I think Erbil, has there were Mossad bases in Iraqi Kurdistan. They
Yeah.
collaborate very closely with the Israelis, and Kurdish, the largest minority populations in this region are in four countries: in Iran, in Iraq, in Turkey, and in Syria. And look what's happened. Look at the constant hammering at these countries, right? Their goal would be to create a Kurdish, there's even a US map conceived about
Yeah.
by a US military, I think a colonel, um, some time ago, many, many years ago, which conceptualized a Kurdish state that would eat into the territory of those four countries and become like a mega state, from which, of course, the US and Israel would
Israel.
run
Yeah.
its operations everywhere. And it is the Kurdish issue that has oftentimes pulled together, drawn together sort of more adversarial countries like Iran and Turkey, or, Syria and Iraq, because there's a real threat from inside. And in most of these countries, the Kurdish secessionists are militarized by foreign powers. So, anyways, no country would allow that, and these four countries yet are supposed to allow it because the Americans want Kurds with weapons and the Israelis want Kurd with weapons. Not, I'm talking about Kurdish secessionists in particular, not just Kurds. Okay. Um,
I think that like
anyways, so
also
so
is
that's another big component of when this happened, and we're talking about who do you think did it. It's very hard to say. There are so many different interests at play in Iraq right now,
yes.
but you could see the Israelis doing something like this, in a false flag way. I mean, just because this is their MO. First of all, it's not just does a party have a capability, is this the way they behave, is one of the things one needs to look at. So it is the Americans and their allies who more often operate this way. But you guys are right. It could be the anti-imperialist forces in Iraq that don't want a UAE, you know, a UAE mega
But
field
but if it
in
was
Kurdistan of all
Yeah,
places.
the
but wait, if it was
it's a
them,
huge, yeah.
if it was them, I feel like because Iraq at this point is under pressure in a similar way as Lebanon to disarm
Mm.
the
Yeah.
Iraqi resistance factions. So if all of a sudden the resistance factions launch this attack against Kurdistan, even it's been in September, Kurdish oil export resumed to Turkey, and the
Mm.
U.S. pressure Baghdad also to accept another oil sharing deal with Kurdistan recently. So, I feel like it's very counterproductive. If it's actually them, it's very counterproductive. It becomes a really bad time. It actually
That's
makes the argument for their disarmament.
that's the
There's
thing.
only,
Like
yeah. I
like
just want to give a background information. Maybe because also it didn't happen suddenly. Yani, this gas was being targeted since for the past week, and 2 days ago the drones were down by the maybe Americans. They didn't say, but they say that two drones were down heading there. So yesterday the operation was successful. So it raises many questions. Yani, as Sharmin said, there's many people that can benefit from this,
and the problem
and even people that didn't do it can benefit from this.
correct, but
Yeah.
here's the problem with, analyzing events going on, incidents taking place in the world, not just in this region, is for the first time openly, okay, we're masses are recognizing the concept that we've been using here in this region forever, which is false flag operations. It is mainstream, this idea right now. So, in effect, the people who benefit could be doing it, or the people, do you know what I mean? I mean, someone could do it for their benefit, and yet their opponents could do it to pin it on their opponents. You have both sides always who can benefit from any of these scenarios, right? Either you want to take your adversary down, you make it look like they did it, or the adversary does it because it benefits them directly. But how do you figure that out anymore? I mean, I gotta say, like, mercenaries, Candace Owens was talking about, like, French legionnaires who were supposedly involved in this plan of the Macrons to get her assassinated. And I looked up French legionnaires because I was talking to a friend who used to be in the US military who said that, like, most French legionnaires are not French. And it turns out that person was right. That, like, maybe only 10%
Yeah.
are French or even French speaking, that most of them are just hired mercenaries, right? So now you have these entire um, armies of people, and they're all like former military things from countries. And the mercenary business is so thriving, like the UAE basically hiring Colombian mercenaries and from other countries, just, bringing in Eric Prince. Eric Prince is, I think, now living in the Emirates, right? Or something.
Yes.
Because, yeah, you have people who've left service, and often happens when they're quite young and healthy, right,
Yeah,
who are becoming guns for hire. And it's been legitimized through even the United States government
I mean,
using mercenary companies to conduct not just some of their operations but most of their operations in countries, a, to give themselves plausible deniability because they're doing dirty actions, right, and B, to just skirt the laws, and C, because it's covert stuff being done.
I mean,
But
let's just bring it back to the beginning of the episode, to the DC shooter, to the
yeah,
Afghan, death squad member.
yeah,
There's so many, like they have this gigantic pool of mercenaries to pull from. That was my question too. With I forget exactly what it was. It was the war in Yemen, I think. When I was wondering, like who is the UAE or Saudi gonna send? They have like a huge army of mercenaries that they can just send wherever they want. Like, and Eric Prince right now is kind of testing that in Haiti.
yeah,
He's testing this new, method of warfare.
yeah, which he fine-tuned in the Emirates, by the way.
Hmm.
And
In Yemen.
I want to say, like, this idea, back to the Afghan shooter in DC. Again, we're stuck with the situation. We recognize that, um, he could have done it to benefit something, right? Something or the people who were backing him, or if he was a lone shooter, right? Or opponents could have done it to pin it on this guy to get this guy's side blamed so that do you know what I mean? I mean,
Yeah.
like just actual
He,
actions versus false flag actions. There's so many of them now you cannot figure out. You
It's
just won't
very
know.
it's
he
very
You know,
might
difficult.
be angry because he was kicked out of his
if
country
anything,
and one shoot. We don't know.
if
Maybe he was
anything,
promised, many more things that he
Yeah,
actually got.
100%. As the one who like told the
dude, he was
Americans where
trained
the,
by the Americans. He was one of those like, uh
but looking at
regional
him, I don't
types,
think he's strange. I mean,
regional no,
his body doesn't
that's
say that.
dumb. What is
No,
Well, it's been a few
I
years
I
since the
saw
Afghanistan war, and you know that the food in the United States is,
yeah,
far
also
from
yes.
healthy.
Okay, yeah.
but I have to say, I remember a New York Times article from some years ago that showed something like 80 something percent of domestic terror acts,
Yes.
or even those that were thwarted before they came to fruition, um, the the perpetrator or soon to be perpetrator was groomed by US intelligence, meaning, going into mosques, talking to somebody about how unfair it is, what's happening in your part of the world, whatever, being just like, working for US intelligence, getting that person all like riled up, saying, we should just do something about it because nobody's doing anything about it. I have some explosives background. Maybe we can work together and whatever, basically grooming the person, to trust them and then carrying out the act and then going, oh, we thwarted a terror attack. That's basically what the New York Times was saying. Over 80% of terror attacks and potential terror attacks, these people were groomed by US intelligence.
Like Al Julani, I think Al
Yeah.
Julani.
I actually think there's less actual incidents that take place, like political incidents. I think the vast majority are false flags, genuinely,
I
because
100% agree. More
yeah,
than 80% maybe also.
because the actors, the people
And
who have
especially when they take action. When they take action, that means it's 99% it's a false flag.
yeah, because the good guys in this region never act. Let's be honest. You know what I mean?
Yes.
This is the problem. This is why I said you have to look at the modus operandi. You have to look at the MO. And when the good guys are the side, people who are just like really upset that bad things are happening and they want to correct it, those guys never get past the starting line. They never do. It is always the bad guys who know how to operate these things and do it. I really think 90% more than that, even, of the incidents that happen in this region that sort of set off political conflagrations are conducted by foreign countries or agents of them in this region. We have evidence of a few big ones, like the bombing of Fadlallah that we later learned
Yeah.
is now on the record, was run by the CIA. Was it William Casey? I can't remember at the time, right? So we know these things, but now I am I'm sure that most of these operations are run, are false flags rather than genuine incidents.
I think, yeah. I think that the age of, the genuine attack is long gone, because the empire has realized how useful it is for the narrative, for the perception, and for their objectives, which they have been successful in achieving. Um, we should talk about Lebanon. We really should talk about Lebanon
Mm,
because, well, the Pope is heading to Lebanon actually in a couple of days. He's currently in Turkey, and he's going to ask for peace. So good luck with that, Mr. Pope. Israel is threatening war again. Heavy, intense war. The Egyptian foreign minister was in Beirut yesterday. And according to reports in Lebanese media, he told, in particular, Parliament Speaker Nabi Berri, that there is no ceiling for the level of attacks that Israel is going to conduct inside Lebanon if Hezbollah is not disarmed. And Israel has said, I think Israel Katz, the war chief, this week, he said we will give them until the end of the year, which is kind of the same deadline that we've been hearing for a while now. The U.S., Thomas Barak has said similar things, or Tagus similar things. Really, it's a case of, you know we know what's going to happen. We know it's an eventuality. At the same time, a new report by, I think it's UNIFIL actually, who reported this. Israel, in 1 year, because today is 1 year since the signing of the ceasefire, Israel has violated it 10,000 times. 10,000 Israeli violations in 1 year, and that have killed dozens upon dozens of civilians, including a recent bombing. And I'm sure you guys talked about this on Monday
Isn't
of
it a
the
few
southern Beirut
hundred?
suburb.
Isn't it a few hundred civilians by now who have died in
It's a few
Lebanon?
hundred deaths.
Yeah,
I'm not sure about the civilian count. The UN
yeah,
figure is like 120 something civilians,
yeah.
but yeah, probably undercounted.
For me, they are all civilians. They were not in active duty.
Good point. Good point.
Yeah, that
Uh,
is true. You're not considered a civilian if you're not armed and if you're not in uniform, or you
Most
aren't
of
considered civilian if
most
you're
of them
unarmed.
were driving their cars in their
Yeah.
with their
neighborhood or
families. Very true,
yeah.
Karim. Very true, Karim. They're hitting apartments. They are. I
Geneva
mean,
Conventions, people, read
yeah,
them.
yeah. So, what do you guys make of this? It's not doesn't really feel like something new, but it does feel like something that is way more, closer. That is much closer than it was, obviously.
Well, I mean, first of all, we do know that the Egyptians have suddenly, their role in Lebanon is suddenly elevated. They've been an interlocutor, a mediator. That's been interesting. I don't think it's been unhelpful. But the way the Lebanese media characterized this visit by Egypt's foreign minister Abdelati was, I mean, they said delivered a clear threat. I didn't understand that. I mean, we actually had that in our Cradle article too. I'm like, what? e- The Egyptians threatened Lebanon, or they delivered a threat by Israel. It's you know, I genuinely, I mean, I think we all know now what, or, well, everybody knows now what we at the Cradle knew a year ago, which was you can't disarm the resistance. Like when they said they're going to disarm Palestinian refugee camps here, there's just a few components of people, of, members of these camps who have arms, first of all. Um, when we said that, I mean, I didn't even understand it. The first question always when they say disarm whoever, the first question, whether in Lebanon or in Iraq or in Gaza, is who's going to do that? Actually, who's going to do that? These countries don't have sovereignty. They don't have sovereignty. So you can't. And usually, the armed components, okay, the resistance groups are far more disciplined and I think, far more experienced with better weaponry, better training, etc., than the armed forces of these countries, which are usually US trained, which means, they train the brown soldiers only to X amount and they make sure the brown soldiers don't have great weapons. So,
As they in Afghanistan, they trained the Afghani army for 20 years,
and they fled the moment the Taliban came into Kabul, and they fled the moment
and
the
also
ISIS came into Mosul. It's
and
like,
also in Iraq. Yeah,
so who, when they say you and whose army, right? Literally, when they say we're going to disarm the resistance, you and whose army? The Israelis are not going to come on the ground.
No.
They are so scared of Hezbollah and have been so since 2000 and even 2006. We have like pictures of Israeli hero soldiers stripped naked and sent back across the border by the resistance. There's no way. So the US Army, of course not. So for me, the plan that the Israelis would do is bombardment, like what the cowards and bullies have done now for decades and decades, meaning the Americans, which is just bomb entire countries. And of course your media doesn't highlight that you're massacring civilians, etc. In this case, the environment has changed. The world is sick of it. Americans are sick of it. Even Israel's become isolated. So they're going to bombard Lebanon and think, well, who's going to make much of a fuss? Well, in this case, the Saudis will make a bit of a fuss for sure. This bin Laden having, not bin Laden, sorry, Mohammed bin Salman having
Honest mistake.
Trump's ear. Yeah, honest mistake. Having Trump's ear more than most leaders in this region because they have a transactional relationship and Trump loves a good $1 trillion transaction. The French also will squeak and squawk about this because they consider themselves owning the Christians of Lebanon, right? And therefore Lebanon. And of course, regional states will want this to stop. And of course, the Gulf countries are going to be really upset at that. Israel's just, making inroads into all the countries they consider within their realm of influence. But Israel's goal is just to wipe out all, you know, um, dwellings, right? All um, institutions, services, electrical things, generators, water supply, whatever, as they've done in Gaza,
Mhm, mhm.
in order to just be able to then physically move into those territories. That's the only way they can walk into Syria. It's the only way they can walk into Gaza. It's the only way they've been able to walk into Lebanon. And so I think they're going to try to blitz it. I really do, but this is why I was saying on an earlier podcast, what if the secret weapon is anti-aircraft missiles? Okay, because once Israeli planes and drones cannot operate in the airspace, Israel's war efforts are done.
Let me very quickly thank Clifford Bostria for his super chat. Thank you so much for your generosity. He says Cradle is the best news source for West Asia. Thank you very much. We think so too. And make sure to hit that like button if you agree.
And
And even if
thank
you
you,
don't,
Clifford,
also
for
hit.
calling it West Asia. That's the best part.
That is indeed the best part. By the way, little shield second here. Make sure to check out our our merch shop, which you can also get some very cool Cradle merch. Yeah, the Israeli army has undoubtedly become, and this is a warning that has been there for years now, an Air Force army. They're not really a ground army. They're not really a siege army, unless they're going against children and women and blowing up hospitals, etc. They rely on their air superiority. I wonder how long it would be an escalation against Lebanon, because it wouldn't be open ended. I think what you just pointed out, Charmin, is really is worth keeping in mind, because I feel like the Israelis would be given like a space to operate within, right? Like, I don't know, a week, 2 weeks, a month.
Yeah,
Uh,
because their military doctrine has always been since the inception of the state, we can't afford protracted wars. We have to do short, sharp ones, which is why
mhm,
the Gaza situation and then attacking Syria and attacking Lebanon for this amount of time has completely flipped the one thing that worked for them for their entire history, and which is why I've always argued that they're draining themselves to death. But yeah, go ahead.
no, I just wanted to mention that, but I feel like the cost to Lebanon, it really is going to be great. It's really going to be great, and Karim is he maintains this thesis that Lebanon really is, or could be, on the brink of civil war. That very quickly this could be activated. Hezbollah has been very hands off for a year now. I mean, entirely hands off. Uh, what would it take? What would it take, first of all, for Hezbollah to stop being hands off and to actually act? And what would that mean for the street? Because I feel like in many cases, unfortunately, or at the very least in large sectors of Lebanese society, there's a, what is the word here? Acceptance of the Israeli violations.
The sort of Samir Jaja, the Lebanese forces. When I say Lebanese forces, I don't mean they're armed forces. There's a political
The
party
party, yeah.
and militia here called the Lebanese forces, which is run by um, Christian right-wing
Extremists.
Christian extremists
Mhm.
that tend to be pro-Israel, pro-US, and they won't even fight Syrian militants coming across the border. They're scared of them. If there's a civil war, these guys are not going to fight the Lebanese resistance. No, no, no. They will absolutely go into the MO of the Israelis and the Americans and put bombs in civilian areas. That's how they operate. Cowards and bullies. None of these forces would ever want to go head to head with the Lebanese resistance fighters. The gap in training and experience
Numbers.
and numbers is just, yeah. So, of course, when they talk about civil war, I think it's more civil strife. I really do, where really hateful things are said and then that there are incidents. But, I've always contended that um, the the Lebanese leaders of the various parties clashing in the Lebanese civil war were younger men then. Okay. They're all still in power, except for the ones that were killed. And they're all old now. Nothing against age. Okay. Um, but these guys, every time there's been for years and years now, Kenny, right? This happens all the time. Oh my God, this could lead to a civil war.
Mm.
And they threaten and they block off roads and they take action like they're militias, come out in the street and threaten people and stuff. And then it dissipates. It's like a Trump threat, go big on the chest thumping and then like scurry away when you realize the other side isn't giving. So I think the fact that you have very elderly males who were in the Civil War now running these parties, they have a great aversion to actually being involved in an actual civil war. But I do think civil strife is definitely on the table. It's already happening, but it is being pushed.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of Lebanese, rational ones do realize that this is the worst thing possible for their country. But Kenny Mobile says no. He's been warning us for ages. Like, you don't understand what's happening. You don't understand what's happening. These guys are gearing up. Um, I uh, I think there's still a minority voice.
Hopefully.
No, the ones who
Mm.
want it is an absolute minority. They always say in every country, and this is a metric that the US Special Forces uses in their unconventional warfare. Okay. It's a metric that um, stipulates that in every country, you have 10% of the population that is super, like, rabidly pro government. Okay, so 10% or under. And then you have 10% on the other side of the spectrum that is rabidly anti government. And then you have the great middle, right? The 80% in the middle. And the role of propaganda is to shift the perception of the middle to come in on the side you want them to come in on, so that that 10% becomes 30%, which then allows you to start to like pour money into a country, help creating civil society and media that changes the narrative even further. And then at 50%, then you start to, put um, push arms into the country and riots and whatnot. So this is in the U.S. Special Forces Unconventional Warfare Manual. You have to assume that in Lebanon, the 10%, the population that wants civil war, according to this metric, is no more than 10%. But they're trying to rally more people to, plump up that number, bring it more to, 30%, then 40%. And it's just not going to happen. This country's seen too much strife. And we're very close to grandparents in this part of the world. We listen to them.
Mm.
So I don't know. I don't know that civil war is on the horizon, but a US civil war, yeah. Do you want to pull up that video or should we put it in at the end? The one I talked about, the CNN interview of the researcher, because it's very
It's ready
interesting.
if you.
But it's like 3 minutes. We haven't planned for it, so we don't know which part the researcher says the good stuff.
I can link it on
Okay, okay.
the.
Kenny
We'll
will
link it
link
in the
it.
description. In the
Yeah,
description,
yeah.
yeah. I
It's a
actually want to
doozy.
hear from Karim because, well, you're Lebanese, you're an Arab speaker. You watch the news, you listen to the
Mm.
street, so to speak. What's the feeling, and what is the narrative that you're seeing right now?
Regarding what's happening between Hezbollah and Israel, as Sharmin said, the Egyptians are very active, and even the Saudis, they said that don't worry, there is no war. But I don't think they have like the leverage over Israel. If Netanyahu wants to launch a war, he will launch a war, and nobody will stop him. That's one.
And aren't they having a
Yeah.
deliberation today
Yes.
in Tel Aviv on war
Yes.
in
On
Lebanon?
they said discussing the Lebanese issue. So that's one. As Sharmin said, I don't think Netanyahu will gamble because he sees himself as the ultimate leader and as the one who came victorious over this war. I don't think they will risk going inside Lebanon and facing like defeat on the border at the end of what happened.
You
I
what
think
he won't launch war on Lebanon? Is that what
no,
you're saying?
they will not enter to the south, they can launch airstrikes.
You mean by
Yeah, yeah,
air, by
yeah,
Yeah,
ground,
by air.
ground
هلا
forces?
for me, the war never stopped. People consider that if Beirut was not hit, that means the
Ten
war
thousand
is stopped.
violations.
Yeah, 10,000 violation. It never stopped. People are being killed, and people that want to go back to their houses, they are being targeted, and bulldozers are being targeted. They don't want
They bombed the capital
to
yesterday.
rebuild anything. And for instance, even the Pope is coming to Lebanon. He's going to all the places except the south. Also, so that's between Lebanon, sorry, Hezbollah and Israel. I think what Israel can do, yes, they can launch more airstrikes on Lebanon. But what I'm afraid of is a civil war in Lebanon, because now Hezbollah, following the many mistakes that occurred the past year, I think Hezbollah can't stand a civil war plus a war with Israel. I think if it occurs, we will see Lebanese forces advancing and the Israelis helping them via air to weaken more and more
but
Hezbollah.
who's gonna fight the
What a
Lebanese
shameful day.
resistance in
You have,
Lebanon? Like I've always said, you and whose army? Who's gonna fight them? If they
I
could
can
fight
name
them,
them.
then they would disarm them.
I can name them.
No, no, actually go and fight. They're
Yeah, I
gonna
can
go
name
into his.
them.
They're going to go into Hezbollah areas and fight Hizb,
No, no, Sharmin. هلا if Israel
setting off
launch,
bombs in these areas. I
if
can see
Israel
that's
launched, okay, the
yeah.
scenario that I'm afraid of, but I can see it in front of me. Israel comes and launch bombardment on Tatir, for instance, which is one of the biggest cities in the south. And they issue warning, for instance. Okay, if you want to
Mm,
escape Tir, you have to go north. If you go north, you
Tyre,
will tire. What Sur?
no,
We
Sur, and
Sur.
yeah.
So first you have the first obstacle, which is Saida. And surrounding Saida, there is Christians. I I I can see people putting checkpoints, killing every Shia or everybody who's with the resistance on the road before reaching even Saida.
How can you tell a Shia from anyone else?
From your papers, from your social media, they will tell you, show me your ID, you're a Shia, they kill you, and
So
next
How
door.
would they
essentially,
stand there in the checkpoints? They're just going to stand there in their checkpoints
Yes,
being
Sharmin.
unchecked?
They did it.
essentially,
They did it from 1975 till 1990.
That was a different time. I'm
Now,
saying today,
now it's easier,
how
Sharmin.
are guys from the Lebanese forces go
Yes.
into
Not, no, no, I didn't say the Venice force. I
uh,
told you I can name them. There's thousands of people that were with the future movement are willing to do this. There is many Palestinians in the refugee camps that are with Fatah are willing to do this. There's thousands of
how are they going to stand there in a checkpoint and themselves be safe? In two
there
seconds, the
there is
checkpoint.
a camp there. Okay, if you order them to, this is your role now. Come out of the camp, make a checkpoint, and kill all the Shias. They will do it. Who will stop them?
Are you kidding me?
Unfortunately, I'm not
Wait, wait,
kidding
wait,
you.
wait. So, like, for instance, let me
Unfortunately,
just say, like, in 2010, I went hunting for Hezbollah scuds in oh, my friend's gonna kill me. In Khiam, okay,
yes.
in the south, because the Israeli media had said, had satellite pictures of here's where Hezbollah's hiding Scud missiles. I mean, it was a total joke. So everyone knew that. Everyone in Lebanon knew that. But I went there because I was like, well, let me go into the mosque in which, the Israeli had said X is where these arms are held. Let me go into the school that they're claiming. But I'm telling you, within minutes of me driving into Khiam in a taxi, I was stopped and they asked me to show ID and stuff. Okay, so nothing happens anywhere without the resistance knowing. So a bunch of guys, let's say even 20 guys, man a checkpoint. In 2 seconds, there won't be 20 men manning the checkpoint.
Who will stop them, Sharmin? The army will not. The government will be complicit in
I'm
this.
saying the resistance. These guys are stopping people.
What
They're stopping
resistance?
Shia to kill them. And sorry, I don't know what.
Okay,
Okay,
Sharmin,
sorry,
I
sorry.
am in Beirut. I
And
am
he
in
was
Beirut.
in a fantasy. So
I
about
am in Beirut.
1975. 1975. Oh my God. There wasn't even the
The
resistance
same
then.
the same people are still in power in yeah, Sharmin.
They cannot do this. The resistance is an entirely different
Sharmin,
stratosphere.
I want to escape.
I can't. I
Israel
can't.
told said and issued a warning that they will bomb Dahi or Beirut. I want to escape. I want to go north. Okay, north. I will be in an area that's a stronghold for Jaja gangs, the Lebanese Forces Party. Okay, what will let them or what will stop them to kill me on a checkpoint?
In their neighborhood, yeah, not in another neighborhood.
They, Sharmin, their neighborhoods are the only neighborhood that will not be bombed. The people will be forced to go there. Israelis and these guys are not stupid. They
Okay.
will do it. يعني, unfortunately, just people might think that I am talking
Yeah.
يعني, like fantasy. This
Mhm.
happened more than once in Lebanon. The Lebanese forces used to go to buses that are full with people from different religion. They will ask for
No,
an
and they used
ID.
to kill other Christians too.
Yeah, also they used to
Hunt down and kill other Christians.
they go to a bus. If you're, for instance, from their area, they will keep you on the bus, and the others will kill them, and they will go. That's what it's ISIS, but Christians. It's the same, yeah.
Okay. Not going to happen.
Hopefully,
Hopefully, indeed, inshallah, as you guys say. Well, for those of you who have missed the Karim Charmin spats, make sure to leave a like. Make sure to leave a like, to
we
hit that
forgot
like
to tell
button.
them about that we recorded
Ah, yes, please,
the
Karim.
question.
Please, please.
Yeah, we recorded the Q&A episode today, and it will
For
be
patrons
online.
only.
Yeah, for Patreons only. It will be our on our Patreon page within like 1 hour or 2 hours. You can watch it. Thank you.
And I've been asked by one of our graphics people today, Yara, to bring this up because she's super excited on designs she's working on. We're gonna launch a Christmas T-shirt. We haven't
Oh,
decided exactly what. Okay, so we're gonna do like special
She didn't
editions.
decide. We decided.
No, what do you mean? I'm the one who brought up the idea. Let's
Yeah,
do a special Christmas T-shirt.
you should decide. يعني you should decide because we decided what we want.
Oh no, no, no! But I love that there was one line that I
Good.
loved, and it was, "Without Palestine, there would be no Christmas." And something, a visual showing you why that is, which I just loved. So yeah,
make
look
sure
out for
to
that
check that out.
because
Yeah,
these these t-shirts you can buy 10 of if you want stocking stuffers for your family who's super pro Palestine, or your work colleagues who are super pro Palestine, or your Christian friends who've seen the light finally and have become like super anti Israel. You're all there in America. So look out for, hopefully in the next week, it'll be on our merch section. So we
Yeah.
will let you know on the podcast. Look out for that. And please become a Patreon so you can ask us the questions that we will answer privately for you every Thursday.
indeed, indeed. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Make sure to hit that like button. Make sure to leave a comment as well, so this video can go out to as many people as possible. Thank you, Charmin and Karim, and we'll see you next week. Bye bye.
Bye bye.